As Advent begins, StarQuest is producing more than 50 hours of shows each month, bringing faith and reason into conversations that matter. Each hour of content takes at least 10 to 15 hours to create, and much more than that on Mysterious World, given all the research and writing that I do. Our patrons make that possible. This season, we're inviting listeners to become monthly patrons at $10 or more, or to increase by $10 monthly. As a thank you, you'll receive a Mysterious World sticker signed by Dom Bettinelli and me. And right now, a generous supporter is matching all new and increased monthly gifts up to $15,000 through Epiphany, doubling your impact. Visit sqpn.com/give to become a patron today. Thank you.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Deep Space Nine episode, In the Hands of the Prophets. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to stick around to the end of the episode. We'll have more listener feedback on previous episodes, what we've had. And I want to encourage you to share the show with your friends to help us grow our community and reach more Star Trek fans out there. We have a great community. We're always looking to grow. So thank you for doing that. Jimmy, well, as we get started, can you give us a recap of what happens in The Hands of the Prophets?
This week, Keiko O'Brien's school gets into trouble when she and the newly introduced Vedic Wynn get into a passive-aggressive catfight about whether Bajoran religious beliefs will be taught at the school. Vedic Wynn is also up to be elected as the new Kai, along with the likely winner, the newly introduced Vedic Bareil. There's also a murder mystery on the station. One of O'Brien's engineers has been killed, and the investigation leads them to discover that the engineer was killed when he caught somebody setting up an escape route from the station. But the evidence has been carefully concealed, and it turns out that the person who concealed the evidence and who was going to escape from the station was O'Brien's assistant, a Bajoran woman named Neela. Neela is in cahoots with Vedic Wynn, and with no way to escape, Wynn sends Neela on what amounts to a suicide mission. That mission is to kill Vedic Bareil and eliminate him from the run-in for the office of Kai. Neela tries to do this, but Sisko stops her. The plot has been so deeply concealed, though, that Vedic Wynn gets away with it, but Kira strongly suspects what really happened, and she and Sisko reflect on how much progress the two have made in trusting each other since the Federation took over the station. The end.
Father, what'd you think of this one?
You know, when I was first saw the synopsis and remembered what this episode was, I did not think very highly. I thought, oh, it's that one. But as I rewatched it last night, I actually enjoyed it a good bit, largely because of kind of that growth in the Sisko-Kira bond, or the Federation-Bajoran bond, if you will. And then a few little subtleties in there I thought were nice to see. Wynn obviously becomes a major villain by the end of the series. And I believe this is the first time she's introduced. Yeah. And so... seeing some of that set up, and then knowing what's going to happen, later with her, Bareil, the whole bit, I ended up enjoying this more than I thought I would.
Jimmy, how about you?
Yeah, I think my reaction was similar. I hadn't watched this very often, and I had a negative impression of it because I don't fully like the way it handles the religious issues. Right. In it. I saw a quote from Ira Stephen Bear saying that, you could say that in this we were just doing Inherit the Wind, the famous stage play and later movie about the Scopes monkey trial. But he thought it gave him a chance to explore the Bajoran religion. And that's true. And so that kind of explains my reaction. I loathe Inherit the Wind. I think it's a terrible piece of propaganda. But I agree that this let him flesh out the Bajoran religion, and I'm in favor of that. So I liked that. It's kind of an awkward religious parable, but when you study it on the dialogue level, there are a lot of places where it actually is well written. More than normal, I went to the transcript and copied and pasted bits of dialogue that I thought were really good. But so I would say it's not subtle, but it helps with world building. And I've seen the hypocritical religious leaders trope a bazillion times. It's like, thank you, Hollywood. I don't need to see that one again.
Yes, this is the introduction of the odious, eventually Kai Wynn. We love to hate her.
and I don't mind her being unsympathetic. She's actually more sympathetic in some ways in this than you would suspect. And who's less sympathetic is Vedic Barile, because he comes across as a calculating politician in this.
Right.
Smarmy. He reminds me of a particular Jesuit priest. I won't get into the details. But in this one,
there are a few of those.
This one's quite famous and well known. Anyway, he just comes across in this. Yeah, you're right. He comes across in this one as kind of as very political and unsympathetic. Louise Fletcher is, of course, great. I mean, as Kai as Wynn in this one, Vedic Wynn. She's an Oscar winner for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nurse Ratched. I mean, she's just great at this type of role, and it's a coup for the show to have her. I mean, she just does such a good job with it. You
know who I also her foil in this is Keiko O'Brien, and I have to confess that at times I like Keiko, and at times I just find Keiko really annoying. So I kind of understand later on in the series why Miles hangs out more with Julian than Keiko. But
they make her the nagging wife. She's less.
They do, and sometimes they give her really great material. So this is no slight on the actress.
Yeah,
they give her really great material sometimes, but other times she can be as unsympathetic as Vedic Wynn. Yeah. And that's the case here. When she's doing her self-righteous, I'm not going to let a religious leader tell me what to teach in my school business. She's just not coming across sympathetic. In fact, Vedic, when I was writing my summary, I had to keep fighting against saying Kai Wynn. But Vedic Wynn actually, in some sequences, comes across better than Keiko. She, like in that scene where they're meeting on the promenade, and Vedic Wynn is like, well, Mr. O'Brien, I've been hearing so much about your wife from the parents of these children. She's obviously a wonderful teacher, and I sincerely regret the disagreement we had earlier. So let me be the first to make a gesture to find common ground. And in that scene, Keiko is just, no. It's like you're being outdone by the religious leader that you're in opposition to, Keiko.
Right. The actress who plays Keiko, Rosalind Chow, is great. She's the most recent thing she's done is that Netflix series, The Three Body Problem.
I know, and she sells out Earth there too.
she's really great in that, but she's really good. I want to mention the writer of this episode, Robert Hewitt Wolf, is himself Catholic.
Or was raised Catholic, at least.
Sure. And he went to Catholic schools. He said he based this, the Bajoran societal system, so he's basically has created the Bajoran Assembly of Vedics and the election of the Kai and all that sort of stuff on, he said, 15th and 16th century Catholicism, when the Pope was a much more political figure, of course, back then, the papal states and all that. And as he put it, different orders all vied to have their candidate installed as Pope. So I'm not sure that's actually true, is it?
Well, there are elements of truth in it. If you want a really good, very brief, humorous look at it, go on YouTube and look up the Horrible Histories video, The Borgia Family, which is very well done and very funny and largely historically accurate.
Okay. Good.
It's done to the tune of the Addams Family.
Oh,
So,
the Borgia family.
yeah.
One of the quotes he has about this is, says, although I was raised Catholic and educated in Catholic schools, that was a choice my parents and I made. I did get a religious education, but I think that's where it belongs, in a religious school. It doesn't belong in all schools.
Yeah, thank you, standard Hollywood line.
Yeah. Just so you just so you know where it's coming from. I mean, it's not a surprise. Frankly. This is the season 1 finale. I should mention that this is they were wrapping up the season, and this is not a cliffhanger season finale, which Star Trek was doing quite commonly at this point, was to have a cliffhanger. But I think I really liked this as a season finale, because what they've done is they've bookended this with the beginning of the season, with the beginning of the series. This how far have we come in our relationship between the Federation and Bajor, and you can see Sisko struggling with this. Like, look at he says to, I think, Kira at one point, like, I feel like we're the Federation are doing all the effort, and the Bajorans are not reaching us halfway on this. And Kira kind of says, "Yeah, I know." But on the other hand, a year ago they were basically slaves to the Cardassian Empire, so they still get a long way to go.
One thing I like about it is they made actual progress in this season. This is sort of the first Star Trek finale where we're at a different point at the end of the season than we are at the beginning.
Right.
Because that wasn't present in the original series, that wasn't present in Next Gen. This is the first time we get it. And it should have been present in Voyager and Enterprise, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
They had plans for, like, okay, we're going to send out the ship and it's going to get its butt kicked, and at the end of the first season of Enterprise, it's going to limp back into space dock and get repaired for the second season, and none of that happened.
Yeah.
But here we do
slowly getting damaged over the journey. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But here we have actual progress, and it's in a more important area than what condition is the ship in. It's in the relationships between the characters.
Right. There's apparently a missing opening teaser scene that
I know. Yeah, I swore when I watched it initially, because I've got the CDs, the DVDs, but I watched it initially. I typically watch them on Amazon Prime, and I was sure I watched that. There's an opening scene where Miles and Keiko are buying Jumja sticks on the promenade. And this comes up later in the episode after the ruckus over the school, where now the Jumja stick seller won't sell them any. And I thought for sure I watched that scene, but when I went back repeatedly trying to rewatch it, I couldn't find it. So I don't know if there's an alternate version on Amazon that you may hit that has that scene and other versions don't.
Yeah, the Paramount Plus didn't have the scene either.
Yeah, that's what was confusing me. I read the thing on Memory Alpha, and I'm like, they're describing an opening scene I don't remember. I'm like, was I not paying attention, or what happened then? And, okay, so I'm glad I'm not crazy now.
And it also sets up Keiko teasing Miles about his assistant, the young woman,
right?
And he is attracted to Neela. They make it clear, and he's resisting that attraction.
Right.
I like they kind of downplay it a little bit. They don't make a big deal out of it. They see him kind of realize in a later scene her making an advance, sort of opening a door.
Yeah.
And you can see on his face he's kind of horrified, like, I need to shut this down. And it's one of the things I like about Miles. He's a good man.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of subtle there. She opens a door, and he realizes that he's kind of horrified, and he basically sends her home, as it were. Says, okay, your work day's finished or whatever. And
I'll close up here.
Yeah.
That I like that. That was good. That one of the things I like about Deep Space Nine is that these are good men,
and
women.
It's human. There's a moment there where you can see he's attracted, and then wham, he shuts the door on
it.
Right. I mean, she's clearly a beautiful young woman, and he's at this
Middle-aged.
point, how old Colomini is, but he's, let's say, approaching middle-aged married man. You know, that's flattering, but it's like, dude, he does the right thing. By
the way, mentioning Neela. Yep. Originally, so this is the second appearance of Neela. Her first appearance was in the previous episode, Duet, and they introduced her in order to pay this off in this episode. But originally, they'd given Miles a different Bajoran woman whose name was Anna something, and they were going to use her as the traitor in this episode. And I kind of wish, I mean, I like this Neela. I don't know why they didn't go with the other woman, but I like the, I would have liked having a longer history before we unveil the traitor, like kind of like what they did with Michael Eddington.
Yeah.
Later on. But it didn't work out, but there's still a trace in the writing, because you'll notice when they find the program that the traitor has been using, it's listed under the initials ANA. And they say it as ANA in this episode, but it's based on the name Anna, whatever it was. Anara, for the previous woman.
Yeah. I wonder if just the actress wasn't available or something. But
yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So the primary conflict here, like you mentioned, is Wynn versus Keiko, and it's sort of they frame it as religion versus science, which is nonsense because religion and science are compatible.
Yeah, and they also, I wish they'd confront it directly, because they have an aversion to the word religion on Star Trek. So they even though they're obviously talking about religion, they have to say spiritual beliefs,
right,
or philosophy, instead of just saying religious beliefs. Similarly, that's part of the whole thing with the prophets, because the prophets are obviously Bajoran gods, and they even refer to them as gods in this episode. Kai Wynn says that, or Vedic Wynn says that Kai Opaka had told her, "You don't look in the eyes of your own gods," referring to the prophets.
Right.
But early on in the episode, when Vedic Wynn bursts into Keiko's classroom, and Keiko has been talking about the entities that constructed the wormhole, Vedic Wynn says, "Don't you mean the prophets?" And Keiko says, "Yes, on Bajor, the entities are worshipped as prophets." And it's like, come on, you don't worship a prophet. They're speaking for someone else. It's the whoever else, whether it's a Jewish prophet for the Jewish God, or whether it's the Oracle of Delphi for the god Apollo. You don't worship the messenger, you worship the source of the message. Yeah. And this has always been a fundamental problem in DS9's portrayal of religion. I mean, they deserve abundant credit for trying to tackle religion on this show in a Gene Roddenberry context, but it's bent because they can't just say what they mean.
I wonder if it was the studio aversion to using religion, that they were afraid of people getting mad.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so it's possible.
Using the word God would almost put it too front and center for people. Maybe they thought. I don't know.
Right. I mean, still, late '80s, early '90s was still relatively, moral majority era, shall we say? That stuff. So they could be worried.
Just a few years later, with Battlestar Galactica, God doesn't care what side you're on. He just wants your love.
Yeah. Well, that was a decade plus later.
Yeah.
But yeah. It's funny to think of how the distance in time between these things. Yeah. So it opens with like, Vedic Wynn, I'm doing it too, showing up in the back of the classroom, and we'll find out this is all a manipulation. Like, this has nothing to do with Wynn's real belief that this is a problem. What she's trying to do is create a conflict that she knows will draw Bareil to the station. It's a convoluted plot.
It's an implausible plot.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go into someone's classroom and start a fight to draw somebody out of their monastery.
Right.
Could you not trust them out of the monastery to somewhere else on Bajor?
Yeah. Invite him to a dinner party.
Right.
Priests and monks love to eat.
Exactly.
They love to be invited to dinner.
You know, the other thing is, like, do they not have any classroom security? Can just anybody walk in the middle of class and interrupt class and whatever?
Oh yeah. Well, this is the Federation, so they don't put guards on their intercoms or anything.
Well, I thought about that later when Jake Sisko takes the turbo lift up to ops. Like, oh, can anybody just ride up to ops and run around? Yeah.
Everyone is super responsible.
I suppose when a bishop shows up in the back of your classroom, you know, because that's what a Vedic essentially is a bishop, I guess.
Cardinal, even.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the conflict starts with, Keiko saying, I don't teach Bajoran spiritual beliefs. That's your job.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is to open the children's minds to history, to literature, mathematics, and science. Okay. And Wynn responds, you're opening the children's minds to blasphemy, and I cannot permit it to continue.
Yeah, okay. So, well, first of all, before we get to that, there's in that same speech, there is Wynn pokes Keiko because she's talking about the wormhole. And Wynn says, do you believe that the celestial temple of the prophets exists within the passage? And Keiko passive aggressively says, I respect that the Bajoran people believe that it does. And it's like, why is Keiko resisting this? It's, I mean, from a scientific perspective, it's, well, the entities that you call the prophets seem to live in the wormhole. Presumably they live somewhere.
Yeah.
And on Bajor, that's called the Celestial Temple. So yeah, I think they have an environment that suits them, that seems to be in this passage. I can't,
whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't get why Keiko is resistant. But then when Wynn says you're opening the children's minds to blasphemy, it's like, okay, nobody in Hollywood knows what the term blasphemy means. Right. It's just negative religious term.
Yeah, yeah.
So not to leave people hanging.
Yeah.
To blaspheme is to speak against something, and specifically in religious context, it's to speak against God. If you said, oh, God isn't all good, he's just mediocre or something, okay, that would be blasphemy to say that in earnest. But the idea that I'm just not teaching Bajoran religious beliefs, that's your job. That's not blasphemy. Right. That's silence.
I mean, I suppose technically if what Wynn says is because you're teaching that the celestial temple is just a wormhole and the prophets are just aliens, that's heresy, right?
Well, except Keiko isn't doing that. Keiko isn't doing that. She acknowledges, she's actually in that initial classroom speech, she didn't say that the prophets are just wormhole aliens. That's an idea Jake brings up later, but it's not in Keiko's classroom. And so Keiko just refers to the prophets as entities, which is a nondescript term, and you can interpret what kind of entity they are according to your Bajoran spiritual beliefs if you're a Bajoran child.
Right. The entities on Bajor, the entities are worshipped as prophets.
Mm-hmm.
The entities who created the wormhole. Right. There's another interesting thing in a later conversation. Keiko insists that she's not teaching any philosophy. I wouldn't teach philosophy. I'm teaching science. Yeah, and Kira actually has a good point. Some might say pure science taught without a spiritual context, it's a philosophy.
Well, yes. The use of the term philosophy in this is like spiritual is right. Quite problematic. Science presupposes philosophical positions, although one of those positions is not that there is no supernatural.
Right.
And so I could have improved the script, but
but I think it's an important point is they kind of use philosophy as if it's interchangeable with spirituality here, but no, philosophy is not really, it encompasses, but philosophy is just a way of looking at the world. Looking at what love of wisdom, right? That's literally what it means. It's like there is a philosophy of science. It's not opposed to science. I found that problematic in the writing again. One of the interesting things about this episode, especially for those of us who have seen the whole series, is to see in the beginning that Kira is actually a supporter of Wynn.
Yeah.
Right.
Now
I've forgotten that.
She's not by the end of this episode.
Yeah.
She turns on Wynn. But at the beginning, I really like in that scene where Keiko O'Brien and Kira and Cisco are in his ready room and they're talking, and Cisco asks for background on who is this Vedic Wynn, and Kira says she's from an Orthodox order. She has some support to become the next Kai, probably not enough. And it's like, wow, that's some nice papal handicap in there. Then Keiko says the question is, how much support does she have on this station? And Kira just says she has mine. And I like that. That's a natural outgrowth of Kira's character. Not knowing anything else, she's going to trust this bishop and support this bishop.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's Orthodox. And
Yeah.
Kira tends to be an Orthodox Bajoran. They also come to, there's talk of, should we have separate schools for the Bajoran children, the Federation children? And we talk, why that's bad. And I'm like, wow, this sort of echoes the discussions that we're currently having in our society about controversial teachings in public schools that contradict religious belief.
This is where they get the most inherit the windy.
Yeah.
In this, and you have you have Kira very reasonably proposing that they may need two schools. Keiko initially says, you can't possibly believe teaching the facts about the wormhole amounts to blasphemy. And I'm going, yeah, it's because that's not what the word blasphemy means. But Kira very diplomatically says, I think some revisions to the school curriculum might be appropriate. You teach a lot of Bajoran children. Keiko says, I'm not going to let a Bajoran spiritual leader dictate what can or can't be taught in my classroom. Kira says, then maybe we need two schools on this station, one for Bajoran children and one for the Federation. And that leads to a discussion of, do Bajoran interests align with Federation interests? Kira maintains they frequently don't. Cisco wants to force them to, but and says, well, how do you suggest we deal with this? And Kira says, I'm not sure that you can. And this is a problem it's ripped straight out of the American educational system. Because what happened was, in the 19th century, there was a movement to start a public school system and compel all children to go into it so that they would become good Americans. And frankly, a lot of people aren't aware of this, but it's an aspect of the situation. A good chunk of it was to undermine Catholic immigrants' faith. The idea was we're going to teach these kids to be good Americans, which means being a good Protestant. And we don't want these kids segregated in Catholic schools where they can teach them their Catholic doctrine. And so that set up the paradigm for American religious education, which later in the 20th century, the Protestant teaching dropped out of the public schools, particularly in the 1960s with like Madalyn Murray O'Hair and her Supreme Court cases in the Warren Court. And so secularism took over the public schools. And now the Protestants a lot of them want to send their kids to the Catholic schools because at least there they'll get faith.
Right.
But this conflict is very transparently based on American educational systems, and it takes a side. here in favor of the idea that there should be a religion neutral public school tradition, even though that is not mandated by the founding documents of the United States. And there are other paths that the country could take and initially did take.
You often hear the argument made, that we can't exempt some children from these lessons because what we're teaching isn't, even though it contradicts your faith, it's important that kids know that people who are like this exist, or that, I'm not going to get into the details, but and it's kind of what Cisco is saying is we need to teach these children together because they need to know, Bajoran children need to know that there's different beliefs than the Bajor out there in the Federation if they're going to join the Federation. And you can understand why maybe there's some of the more Orthodox Bajorans might say, is joining the Federation and having the Federation's values change Bajoran values, is that worth it? It's an interesting conflict that continues a little bit through the series. Eventually they conclude, yes, they should. But, I might have a different point of view.
Father Jason, as someone who presides over a Catholic school, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, well, one is I'm very glad we have Catholic schools, right? For the reasons you mentioned historically, but also because even now, one of the things that I think we do in a Catholic school is help the children not only to learn the faith, but to have kind of a Catholic worldview. And so that when we're studying things like history, that we can look at, not only what happened, but see kind of what's the right and wrong that goes into that. When we look at something like science, we can see that it is very compatible with the faith, and there's not a contradiction there. So yeah, I think it, being a pastor of a Catholic school has convinced me, yes, of how great and how valuable they are in that sense.
Okay, so are the entities just wormhole aliens, or are they prophets?
Well, within this show, we come to find out they're a little bit of both, I think, in the end, right?
Yeah. It's interesting when you mentioned, Jimmy, that Wynn offers this compromise. Okay, just then don't teach about the wormhole at all. Was that a reasonable compromise? Or did Wynn know there was no way the Keiko would go for that?
Well, given that they later reveal that Wynn is doing all of this as a ploy,
yeah,
I think we have to look at Wynn's public statements as not necessarily reflecting her real views, but as just things she's doing tactically. In the same way, we've actually got to look at Vedic Baril's views as things he's doing in this episode, as things he's doing tactically because he wants to be elected Kai, not necessarily his real views. But what I care about with this as an object of television is this a reasonable proposal in the real world? What they're, if we translate, like, can we just take issues like here they call it the wormhole, although they also broaden it to, well, what about when we come to issues of evolution and the origin of the universe and so forth? Should those be taken out of schools too? And I think that the whole idea of public schools that are viewpoint neutral is a mistake. I think that what we should have is schools in this nation. They may receive public money, they may receive public support, but parents ought to be able to put their children in a school that reflects their values. And there is nothing in the Constitution that prevents that. Sometimes folks think that the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment prohibits it. The Congress shall not establish a religion in America, but that neglects the meaning of the Establishment Clause. What it meant to establish a religion at the time the Constitution was drafted was to endorse a particular church. So, like, if you say this is an Episcopalian nation, which was the most common religion at the time, or this is a Presbyterian nation, or this is a Baptist nation, or this is a Catholic nation. That's what the Establishment Clause is preventing, is the endorsement by the state, by the federal government, of a specific church. State governments were actually allowed to endorse specific churches. So the Establishment Clause did not apply to them. And I would say, yeah, if you want to help schools with public money, that's good, but you need to let people use it to educate their children the way they want to educate them. And so I would say, should children have exposure to evolution? Yes. Any child who's going to grow up in our society needs to have exposure to that concept. I also personally think evolution is scientifically supported, and I would want my children taught that way. But if someone has another view, I think they should be allowed to have their children taught the way they think is appropriate and not have their child's belief undermined by the school their child goes to. The school is an extension of what the parents want taught. And so the idea of let's just not teach anything here on these subjects, I think, is a bad idea that is generated by the idea of we've got to cram them all together and teach them all the same thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could have a long discussion about the philosophy of education, but this idea that everyone, all Americans, should have the same body of information and knowledge and education. Why not a diversity of perspectives and beliefs? And
and frankly, I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but frankly, how many kids need to have a detailed knowledge of evolution? I mean, you need to know the concept, but the public schools don't need to impart belief in evolution. Many people do just fine in life without believing in evolution. Right. And unless you're doing work in biology or medicine or even maybe not even medicine, but unless you're doing work in biology or paleontology or something like that, belief in evolution is not essential for doing your job. If you're an auto mechanic, it doesn't really matter. If you're, an engineer, it doesn't really matter if you believe in biological evolution or not.
Right. There are plenty of flat earthers getting by every day.
Well, I think evolution's a bit better supported than the flat Earth theory, but
yeah, I agree. But they're just as there are people who believe the Earth isn't round, and they as long as they're not pilots or something, they're fine. Wynn has an anecdote that is revealing. You mentioned it, the Kai Opaka one. There's this meeting between Wynn and Cisco in the Bajoran temple, with the orb not present, by the way. The orb isn't there. Wynn says, I once asked Kai Opaka why a disbeliever was destined to seek the prophets, referring to Cisco. And she told me one should never look into the eyes of one's own gods. I disagreed. I told her I would do anything to look into their eyes. She suggested that I sit in darkness for a day, and quite properly so. I think it's revealing that this is a big character moment. This tells us a lot about Wynn, because clearly the way Louise Fletcher plays this, clearly she disagrees with, the quite properly so. Clearly she thought this was bad. She didn't like what was done. She plays it so well. But the fact that she says, I would do anything to look into their eyes. She's grasping. She's desperate in some sense. Her own, I think it reveals a little bit about her own lack of faith. Because in this one, she says she's consulted the prophets, but we find out later on in later episodes that she never has actually had an orb experience. The prophets never revealed themselves to her in the orbs. And I think they've created this character, this religious leader who clearly lacks a well-grounded faith, which is interesting as we go on with her. I just think it's a revealing quote for her.
Mm-hmm. I think the exchange is also interesting because of what Kaiopaka meant. So you have Vedic Wind saying, I would want to look into the eyes of my gods. And Opaka says, well, then you should sit in darkness for a day. What does that mean? Well, okay, when you come out of sitting in the darkness for a day, your eyes are going to be adjusted to darkness and the light will be dazzling. It'll be too much for you. And so that's the meaning behind why you shouldn't look into the eyes of your gods, because it's going to be too much for you. And it's going to be too dazzling to behold, the face of God. And so, so that's what I took away from that exchange.
And Wynn almost approaches it like, oh, yes, that was a punishment for me. Just the way she kind of says it, or properly so. Where it's not, it clearly wasn't a punishment. It was an illustration.
A teaching moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that, again, I think it reveals a lot. So there's a scene where Jake goes to Cisco. You mentioned where Jake shows up in ops, and they go into the office and have this discussion, and Jake is very upset. We start with the how Keiko changed the lesson to talking about Galileo, and then of course then we get the whole Galileo myth, the perpetuation of this myth that Galileo was unjustly persecuted for just daring to teach that the Earth orbited the sun, which was not actually what he was persecuted for, right?
He was persecuted for teaching that there's sort of the diegetic and the non-diegetic element of Galileo's thought. The diegetic element is he taught this as a fact when the evidence available at the time did not support it. Because there were counter arguments, like if we're moving around the sun, we ought to see parallax with the stars. They ought to appear to shift their positions dependent on where we are in our orbit. And that's true. And they couldn't see parallax in the stars at the time, because it turns out the stars are so far away that the telescopes they had at the time did not reveal the parallax. So the telescopes we have today do reveal the parallax that should have been seen. Also, the idea that the Earth moves around the sun wasn't the real thing that was the issue. Galileo proposed that the sun is not at the center of the solar system. He proposed the sun is the center of the universe. And that is something that modern science does not support. We can't find a boundary to the universe, so it doesn't appear that the universe has a center, at least not a findable one. But Galileo was claiming that the not just that the Earth moves around the sun, but the sun is the center of the universe, not the Earth the way it looks. And then, so those were kind of the diegetic reasons that Galileo had problems. He was welcome to propose this as a hypothesis and as a way of explaining the visible data, but he wasn't to teach it as this is definitely true, given that we have other evidence. The non-diegetic reason that he was persecuted was the Pope had asked him to, when he wrote his book on the dialogue between the two great world systems, to make sure you include the alternative geocentric perspective and you let arguments be made for that. So Galileo did that, but he put all those arguments in the mouth of a guy named Simplicio, or fool. And he took the Pope's positions and put them in the mouth of a person labeled a fool. And so he insulted the Pope, who had been kind to him. And that's the real reason that Galileo encountered difficulties. It's like, if you don't bite the hand that feeds you. If the Pope's doing you a favor and letting you teach these newfangled ideas, do not mock the Pope.
Right, exactly. And the Pope was, not just the spiritual leader, but also the king. And you don't mock the monarch that you serve. Yeah. So So there you have that in the beginning of this, and then in the conversation, Sisko actually tried to make this explanation to Jake of the prophets. He says the wormhole aliens can see the future as well as they see the present. So why can't they be called prophets? He's trying to kind of split the difference, I guess, or at least explain to Jake why it's not inherently wrong for the Bajorans to believe that the wormhole aliens are prophets in a way. But is this a good explanation? Because, as you mentioned, Jimmy, the Bajorans really treat the aliens as gods.
Well, this is where they play it both ways with what the prophets are. Sisko's statement that I like this sequence where, Jake is all hot up and bothered about this, and Sisko is calming him down and saying, hey, you don't want to take sides in this way. You want to be able to see multiple perspectives. And the entities I encountered, you can look at them as just aliens, but they see the future easily. Mm-hmm. What's unreasonable about calling them prophets? And it's a matter of interpretation, how you want to look at them. And I thought this was actually very well written. I wish that we had a more consistent through line of that reasonableness in this episode.
Yeah. One thing I like here too, Sisko actually points out too, like, hey, look, this Bajoran spiritual beliefs are what got them through the occupation. That's what, helped them to survive. And then he cautions Jake, not to become sort of the uber orthodox skeptic, as it were, not to become the person who is so upset by what Vedic Win is doing that he takes on the skeptical position and leaves no opening whatsoever for the Bajoran belief system.
Yeah. Sisko walks this difficult line. I mean, I like that the creators of the show put him in this essentially impossible position of being Federation commander of this space station. Oh, and part of the Bajoran belief system that he doesn't believe in.
It's a parallel to O'Brien Must Suffer. Sisko must suffer, just in a different way.
Right. And you can see he's walking that line in this conversation with his son. Like, how difficult would it be for him to have to explain to his, to help his son? Look, I occupy this position in the Bajoran, religious hierarchy somehow, and I'm not going to, publicly reject it because these are their beliefs. I'm not going to, reject their beliefs, even if I don't believe in them myself. And what he's doing is showing kind of an open mind in a sense. I mean, he doesn't believe it, but he's at least, gracious enough to let people have their own beliefs that help them.
And later on, he'll become much more comfortable in this.
Yeah.
Although they didn't do what I would have done over the course of the series, which is they flirted with this a little bit, but they never really did it. They should have let us know more about the emissary and what is the emissary prophecy to do. And then that we would have these questions of how is this prophecy going to get fulfilled? And then they need to pay that off. And you can see how they did that with like Battlestar Galactica, which was, done by Ron Moore to correct some of the difficulties caused by what they weren't allowed to do on Deep Space Nine. It's like, if you're making religion central to this, you need to exploit the dramatic potential. You've named someone as this is the emissary. They've got a big job to do. Let them do it. Let them have doubts and generate drama from what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to interpret this? And then you got to pay it off. And they never really did that.
Right. We get some in the later seasons, but not enough.
Yeah. And eventually they try to craft something, but it comes out of nowhere. It's like, suddenly I've got to go to the fire caves. Okay. Why don't we have a prophecy about the emissary going to the fire caves that set up a year in advance?
Right. Exactly. So at this point, Sisko goes to Bareil. He's looking for a counter to Win, and Bareil is the leader of the opposite faction and the favored one to become Kai. And I find it interesting that Bareil comes across as a little slimy in this one. He could he's so I reject all that that over orthodoxy,
barbaric ear grabbing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is I was going to say is. The first thing he does is reject a sacred ancient ritual, at least a devotional ritual. And, in Catholicism, if I see someone like, a religious figure, and the first thing they do is kind of poo-poo on,
I'm not wearing that Mosetta.
Yeah. What's that?
I'm not wearing that Mosetta.
Yeah, right. or just, they reject the rosary or something, like that. It's like, it's kind of concerning to see right off the bat. That tells me that maybe you don't believe as much as Wynn, kind of lacks faith. Maybe you kind of lack faith in the other direction. I don't know. It's not a good start.
That goes with how Robert Hewitt Wolf's approached this episode. It's like different factions vying for the papacy in a non-spiritual time.
Mm-hmm.
And they're taking different approaches. But the way it comes across in this episode, both Vedic Bareil and Vedic Wynn are hypocrites who are trying to attain self-promotion. It's just Vedic Wynn is willing to use assassination to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Bareil later kind of, I don't know, they kind of they rehabilitate him a bit.
They have to because he's going to be Kira's boyfriend.
Yeah.
And like Samantha Carter, every boyfriend has to die.
Right. So then we have this conflict on the station. This between the Federation and Bajorans, and we start to have a Bajoran sick out. And
Blue flu. Yeah.
And Sisko confronts Kira about this, and he basically reads to the riot act, said they better get back to the work, or they're going to find themselves on the first transport back to Bajor, and we'll find someone to do the jobs that they're not doing. Basically, you can have your religious beliefs, but you got a job to do, and he kind of confronts her a little bit about this is the point where he kind of says, I feel like I've been extending my hand way more than you've been extending yours in meeting me halfway. We're not halfway on this, so I think it's interesting.
It's an interesting moment, but it undermines one later in the episode. I think the least aesthetically pleasing for me part of this episode is where Sisko confronts Kai Wynn on the promenade. And he makes this big bombastic speech about you're trying to undermine the Federation, but it's not going to work because we work with these people every day and they know that we're not the devil and we have fights, but we always come out with a greater understanding of each other. And I'm going, this doesn't sound much like the complaints you were making earlier with Kira about I'm doing all the giving here.
Right. That's true.
And that speech to me was just too over the top. I think that is where there was bad writing in this episode.
It's kind of a Star Trek trope, isn't it, to have the captain, whoever the captain is, to kind of give that sort of bombastic speech that convinces everyone in the end, or some in the end.
Yeah.
So we have the terrorist attack on the school, the bombing. Wynn is a terrorist. I mean, and it's not. I suppose most Bajorans are not far removed from having been terrorists recently. So.
She's a less sincere terrorist than Kira.
Right. Yeah. Well, she's certainly not willing to put her own life or even reputation on the line. But she draws Bareil to the station, and we have the whole, climactic moment where they discover it's Neela and all that sort of stuff and stop her. One of the things I find really interesting about the conclusion to this is they set up that Wynn is not going to be elected, Kai. So she has this plot to kill Bareil, get him out of the way so she can be elected. The plot fails and she's elected anyway. And I think it's really fascinating that they did it this way.
She's not elected in this episode, though.
No.
So
they eventually decide to have her.
Yeah. And I think that, that they realized once they, set all this up, that having the unsympathetic character elected as the Kai gives you the greater drama. Oh, yeah. So they made the right decision to have her elected Kai. I don't remember the circumstances well enough because it's early Deep Space Nine where that happens, and I tend not to rewatch the early episodes as much. But I look forward to when she actually gets elected Kai, so I can see how they did it and refresh my memory on that.
Yeah, trying to see when.
Yeah, I don't remember that very well either.
I think it's the Circle in season 2, which is fairly early.
That's early.
That's very early. That's like the first episode, isn't it?
Or it's like a 3-part opener.
Yeah, it's a 3-part opener. And I think, Wynn shows up in this one, and she is still Vedic in that. Okay, she's still
Barile
Vedic
did something where he disqualified himself, didn't he? Like, didn't he? Something, I don't know, something happened where he said he was going to step out of the race, or maybe I'm not remembering that right.
It could be.
We're kind of.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, she's still. I'm trying to find the episode where she does, where she's no longer listed as Vedic Wynn, and
it's probably
kind of late
3, actually.
Is it already in season 3? Wow, I thought it was late in 2, maybe.
Yeah.
So they have a long interregnum there in the Bajoran religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
they need to do what we did. You take the Vedics, you lock them in a room, and you only give them bread and water until they get a candidate.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, the end of season 2, because that's the one where I think Barile is accused of having been a collaborator, and that's what moves things. I think that's what it is. Yeah. So, yeah, so it'll be a while, but I do find it fascinating that, like, you're right, Jimmy. It makes for better drama to have the bad guy get elected Kai. I mean, and as such a contrast to Kai Opaka, who was so holy and likable. And then you have Barile and Wynn, who were unlikable, both of them. I know some people like Barile. I never liked him. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I know they try to make him sympathetic later on, but I never really liked Barile.
Yeah, slimy. Any other notes on this one, Father?
No, we've covered pretty well, I think.
Okay. Jimmy, how about you?
Oh, I think we've covered this episode within about an inch of how far it can get covered.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, it has that religious context, so I thought we could really do a good job with that, and we did. I think we did. Let's get to the feedback we have on. This is from our recent episode on the TOS episode Cat's Paw. Emily wrote an email. She said, "We didn't have access to this episode for years, so I was really excited to see it for the first time. I remember enjoying it, but at the same time being a bit disappointed. Very tropey. I think it helps to know it was aired the first time on Halloween. My favorite things about the episode were Korob and that line from Spock about the bad poetry. Mm-hmm. Viva the Weird Sisters." Was it not? Did they not play it in syndication? I wonder.
I don't know. I don't know what the correspondent is referring to.
Yeah. It may just been hard to get, or she didn't have access to it. That might have been it as well. But I know there were some episodes of TOS that didn't get heavy rotation in the syndication. I'm not sure how they decided what to play when, but
well, in some places it was based on local. Star Trek was syndicated in multiple countries, and in some countries, certain episodes were banned.
Yeah,
like Patterns of Force was banned in West Germany. Because it dealt with Nazis.
Right.
And so given the horror elements in Cat's Paw, it's possible it was banned somewhere.
Right. That's true. All right. I do remember seeing it myself as a kid. So at those, it was the pipe cleaner aliens was the ones that really caught my. All right. Well, thank you, Emily, for your feedback. Now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons and make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Rhea B, Daryl F, Jacob C, Stephanie A, and Jonathan L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us this time. We'd love to know what you thought of In the Hands of the Prophets. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek. Send us an email to trek@sqpn.com. Visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or watch the Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, and subscribe, like, and leave a comment. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Voyager episode, Random Thoughts. Until then, Father Jason Tyler, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you. And I just have this random thought. I just want to reach out and grab your ear and determine if your pie is strong. But in any event, live long and prosper.
And you can go with those random thoughts. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, be careful who you share your jumja with.